I am so excited to be in the kitchen because I am about to make one of my most favorite desserts from New Orleans, and it's called king cake. Now, a lot of you out there right now are like, what is a king cake? If you're from New Orleans, you already know what it is. But for those of you that don't know what a king cake is, it's a traditional bread that we serve during the Mardi Gras season. I know it's called a cake, but it's actually a bread. It's a sweet bread, similar to like a cinnamon roll, but it's fluffier. And it melts in your mouth, and it's topped with an icing and crystallized sugar and Mardi Gras colors. They come in many different variations, cream cheese filled, apple filling, so many different ways. But I love that traditional king cake. That sweet, soft dough mixing with that sweet icing and crystallized sugar. It is so good. I'm gonna show you how easy it is to make coming up next on the Sweet Spot. I have all of my ingredients out and I'm ready to begin making our king cake. So we're going to start by adding our yeast and our sugar to our mixing bowl. You can take a whisk or a wooden spoon and you want to mix the sugar and the yeast together just until it's combined. Just like that. All right, on to our next step. Now that our sugar and yeast is in our mixing bowl, we're going to combine our water and milk. You want warm water and warm milk at about 110 degrees. That's really going to help activate that yeast. So we're just going to mix these two together. You can use a whisk or a spoon. You just want to stir and get those two ingredients really combined. Now it's time to add this mixture to what's in our mixing bowl. Just take your milk and water mixture and pour right over your yeast and sugar. You can once again take a whisk and just mix that together. Then take a plate and place it over your mixing bowl. Give it about 5 minutes for that yeast to really activate and begin to bubble. Okay, so our yeast is doing its thing in a mixing bowl. Let's pre-mix our dry ingredients. So take your flour, your salt, and your nutmeg. And you just want to put those ingredients into a bowl, and just using a spatula or a spoon, whisk, whatever you want to use, just mix it together and get that all combined. There's no rhyme or reason to this step. You just want to make sure it's all mixed together. All right, we're going to set that aside because we're going to use it a little bit later. So it's been 5 minutes. Let's check on our yeast mixture to make sure it's activated and it's real frothy and foamy. Yeah, it's exactly what we wanted, a nice froth and foam. So now let's start adding our remaining ingredients and really build our dough. And I just want to show you what your yeast mixture should look like. You see how there's a nice coating of foam and froth on the top? That's really what you want to see. So we're going to lock that back in place. And now we're going to add our butter. And cut your butter into little squares. They don't have to be precise. You just want them easy enough to break up. So we're gonna add a dough hook to our mixer. You're gonna mix this on medium and you'll start to see little bits of the butter break off into the yeast mixture. That's what you want. You're not gonna see your butter completely dissolve and break apart. It's just gonna separate a little bit. So we're gonna do that for like a minute or two. All right, now that's done, and I want to show you what it should look like. So you see how the butter's not completely broken up, but there's little pieces of butter that have broken away. That's what you want. All right. We're gonna put that back on because next we're gonna add our egg yolks. I like to pre-break my eggs. So I'm just gonna take and break up those yolks using just a little fork. And then we're gonna add that into our dough. And once again, just mixing on medium until that's combined. All right, now that we got our egg in there, we're gonna add our lemon zest and start adding our flour. We're gonna add in our flour a little at a time. So I'm gonna add about a cup of flour at a time. So we're gonna just take our cup here, and it doesn't have to be precise, a leveled cup. You just wanna get approximately a cup at a time, just slowly mixing your flour. So put that in there, and then we're gonna mix this once again on medium. And you will need to scrape down the sides of your bowl in between additions just to make sure all that flour gets down in there. Now we're gonna add our second cup. And after you add your second cup is when you really wanna start paying attention to how that dough is forming. If it starts to break away and not stick to the sides, you may not need much more flour. But the last cup you wanna add very slowly to make sure you don't add too much flour. Once again on medium. All right, you see that dough forming? That's what you want. It's still sticking a little bit to the sides. So I'm gonna take about another 1/4 to a 1/2 of a cup and pour in. I'm going to move the speed up, so it's gonna be medium high. So my dough is still a little sticky, but not much. So I'm not gonna add too much more flour, so just a little bit. If you're not sure how much to add, start really, really light. Like start going down to a 1/4 of a cup or even less. It's better to build the flour than to add too much. And we're gonna do this one once again on the higher speed. All right, and that did the trick because you can see my dough's not sticky. It's a very soft, fluffy dough. Now it's time to knead. So this is the moment you get to put your muscles to work. You can skip arm day when you're making dough. So I'm gonna take a little flour because you want a lightly floured surface. And then you're gonna turn out your dough. You wanna knead your dough for about 8 to 10 minutes. The dough will be soft and feel moist to the touch. You really wanna work that gluten to really create the structure of the cake. So we're just gonna test our dough ball. If you poke your finger and the dough bounces back, it should be ready. So form it into a ball. And we have a well-oiled bowl here, so you wanna oil your bowl. I'm gonna put it in and kind of turn it so oil gets complete around the dough ball, and then I'm gonna take a piece of plastic. And you don't have to be firm, you just wanna keep the air out, so loosely place it on top. And you're gonna let this proof in a warm environment for at least 1 hour. You wanna see it double in size. It really needs to grow. If it's a little longer than an hour, that's okay. It all depends on the temperature of your kitchen. So now let's roll out our dough. If you notice, I have my oven preset at 350 degrees, and you see this mat. You don't need this mat. I'm just gonna use a pastry mat. If you don't have one of these, just simply lightly flour your surface and then continue to roll in. We're gonna roll this to roughly about 20 by 12. I say roughly because it doesn't have to be perfect. So we're just gonna start rolling our dough. I start in the middle and roll down and roll up. And I'm gonna do the same thing here. Roll back and roll forward. Now you can see I roughly have my rectangle and I just need to roll it out to balance it. Now it's time to prepare the cinnamon and sugar filling that's going to go in the center of our king cake. So just take your 1/2 cup of sugar, like I have here, and your tablespoon of cinnamon. Just combine them. I take a fork and I just stir and kind of mix it up. You'll start to see a change and mix very easily. There you go, there's your cinnamon sugar. So there's 2 ways you can now make your king cake. You can just do your filling over top and roll the entire rectangle, or you can do a twist. And I'm gonna show you how to do a twist. But first, we have to split our dough in half longways. So I'm gonna do that with a piece of cutter next. You can eyeball it. I do have these little numbers here, but I'm gonna pretty much eyeball it. They don't have to be perfect. And just in the center, just slowly roll your piece of cutter as straight as possible. It's okay if they're not the same size, your cake is still gonna look beautiful. So we have our 2 halves here, and we're gonna take our pastry knife. You can take a regular butter knife, and we're gonna smooth our butter over our dough. And you want your butter at room temperature and really soft enough to work over your dough. And I do leave a little bit of an edge, because once you roll it up, you don't want all your filling coming out of the end and spilling out when you go to bake it. If it's too close to the end, your dough won't bond correctly. When you go to bake, all your filling will end up at the bottom of your baking sheet. Almost there. And you want to make sure you use all 6 tablespoons of butter. It may seem like a lot, but trust me, it's going to help hold in that filling and give you a nice gooey cinnamon sugar swirl throughout. Now it's time to move on to spreading our cinnamon sugar, and just using your fingers, just sprinkle that cinnamon sugar everywhere there's butter. Just right on top of that butter. Just all over. Sprinkle the sugar. I go lightly on the edge, because once again, when I start to roll it, I don't want a lot of it to fall out. And with the cinnamon sugar, it's okay if you have extra. You don't want to overload the cinnamon and the sugar. You want just enough to absorb into that butter and create that nice gooey swirl. There we go. Now your hands will be full of cinnamon and sugar. Before we do this next step, I do encourage you to go rinse off your hands, unless you'll have cinnamon sugar all over the outside of your dough. So give me a second, I'll be right back. So I'm gonna start with my end here and just pick it up and fold it over. So I get a nice start. And then just continue that motion, working from one end to the other and then back. Then rolling this end, and then going back. Unrolling this end, and then going back. There we go. And then there. All right. Then tucking my seam underneath of your dough. So I'm gonna show you again on this side. As you can see, I'm just taking that in and folding under. And then, again, working my way down. And then, again, working my way over. Then working my way back. All right, there we go. Then once again, kind of lightly pressing the seal. That down. And now it's time to create our braids. So as you can see, one of my braids went a little longer. That's okay, the way you fix it is you can take the other one and just lightly stretch it out so they balance. So once again, we're not really, I keep calling it a braid, but it's actually not a braid, it's a twist. And twisting is a little easier than braiding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this piece right here. I'm going to take this piece and wrap underneath. So that creates our bond. Make sure my dough is closed. Then we're going to roll that over, bring that one over, and just keep twisting it until you get a nice twist. All right, bring that forward, bring that one over. Bring that piece forward, bring that one over. Bring this piece forward, bring that one over, bring this piece forward, bring that one over, bring this piece forward, bring that one over, and then I'm just gonna tuck underneath. All right, see how we have a nice twist? Now, just take your twist and make sure your ends of your twist are really nice and bonded, because you're gonna twist those ends over one another to create your bond, your king cake. And if they're not tight, they'll open up in the oven. All right, there's your cake. So I've transferred my king cake onto a baking sheet with parchment, loosely covered with plastic. And we're gonna let this rise another 20 to 30 minutes. You'll start to see it really puff up and the cake takes shape. So you really wanna let it set. Sometimes I'll go to 30 depending on how much the cake has risen, but you really wanna see the cake expand and fill out. Before we put our cake into the oven, we need to make our egg wash. Take your egg and milk and just whisk that together until well combined. Then just take your pastry brush and graciously wash all over your king cake. Now bake your cake in a 350-degree oven for 30 to 40 minutes. Once your cake is done and cooled, it's time to make our glaze. Take your confectioner sugar with your milk and whisk until smooth. Start with 2 tablespoons and then work your way up. If you like it thicker, stay with less tablespoons of milk. If you like it thinner, add more. Now add your lemon zest. This gives a nice zing to that glaze, so it's not overly sweet. It has a nice refreshing taste to it. Lastly, let's add in our vanilla. All right, it is time. Look at that texture. It is time to glaze our cake. Just take a spoon and just generously layer that beautiful icing all over your king cake. Make sure you get it in all the cracks. You want to really cover your cake with this beautiful sugar glaze. Once our glazing is done, it's time to put our signature Mardi Gras colors on our cake. Take your purple, green, and gold sprinkles and generously sprinkle over the cake, rotating the colors. You can start with any color, just make sure you keep the same cadence around the entire cake. So you notice I started with gold, then I'm going to purple, then to green. And I like a lot of the crystallized sugar, so I am very, very generous with mine. Look at that beautiful king cake. Ooh, it's gonna be so good. I cannot wait. Let's slice it open. Look at that beautiful cinnamon swirl inside. It's gonna be so good. Thank you for allowing me to share this beautiful king cake recipe with you. I hope you have as much fun making it at home as I had bringing it to you today. I cannot wait to sink my teeth into this slice of this beautiful king cake. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe. More to come, lots more to come. See you soon. So good.